Hey guys, it's Tessa. Today I am filming the final video in the Halibut sweater series. Here's how you can see the color work. And I'll insert like a clip here or something. That's the whole thing. I will also add that the sleeves are perfect in length. I just recently burned myself on the oven, so I can't have any like sleeve touching that part of my arm, so that's why it's rolled up. But other than that, let's get on with the video. I'm gonna be crocheting as well. This is a project I've been working on since December and just keep putting in places where it doesn't belong and then I lose it. But this is the Ellison vest. I think I did a couple of videos where I talked about it in December. But anyway, I'll put the pattern and artist here. But to begin with, I know in the first video I mentioned a bunch of the modifications I was planning on making to this sweater. I think I only ended up making a couple modifications really. First one being really was just the collar. So again, those three options that are originally noted in the pattern are the turtleneck, the mock turtleneck, and then the crew. Also, if you hear our dog, blame my husband because he's acting crazy, making our dog act crazy. But anyway, the first modification I made was the collar. Would you like to show your Pokemon card to the class? Fantastic. We went to a like mart, like I want to call it like a gamer flea market is what I called it. I don't really know what you want to call it, but we went to a local game store and they were having like a little card show almost. I don't know really what to call it, but he got a couple cards from it. Anyway, back on topic. First modification I made was the collar. I did not end up doing any of those three options because I didn't really like the overall look of those three options. So I ended up just doing a folded crew neck essentially. In addition to that modification for the collar, I also added a stripe of white, or light gray, just a couple rows of the light gray, to match in with the color work. And then from there, I did the rest of the stitches slash short rows, all that stuff, pretty much the same as noted in the pattern. It took me a couple tries to do the short rows, but that's also just because I haven't done short rows very often and I don't do them very often. So it was one of my first, I think like it was like my fourth time ever doing short rows and like the second time doing short rows correctly. So it took me a couple tries, but once I got it figured out, I was fine. And then I started moving on to the color work. I did all of the extra rows as needed before the color work as noted in the pattern. Then when I got to the color work, I think I got to about row 30 is my guess, or roughly around there, before I decided to just rip this whole thing out. The big problem I was having is that my gauge was really far off. So for whatever reason, somehow, even though my test swatch said otherwise, I was knitting really loosely in the color work section and it was making it really baggy and even more oversized than I really wanted it to be. Plus I hadn't done any of the blocking yet, which for this yarn did actually a substantial amount of blocking or a substantial amount of growth. So I ended up ripping the whole thing out. I went down a size. I ended up doing the second largest size, which I think is like size 9 or size 8 in the pattern, just because I was like, that might be better for me fit wise. And I really don't mind the oversized fit, at least a little bit. I don't typically mind. And then once I ripped it all out, I felt a little bit like not sad, but defeated almost, just because this is really my first big knitting project that I've done 100% successfully. So it was just a little discouraging to, you know, have the whole thing made and then, or not the whole thing, have 30 of the color work rows done and then have to frog the entire thing. So that was a little gut-wrenching, but I knew as a whole it was going to be for the better. So I went down a size and then I got back to where I was in the color work. I do have a gripe to pick regarding the color work though. I don't think this pattern needs to be nearly as long as it is, or this chart needs to be as long as it is. I think this chart is 65 rows, and I think I could cut at least 10 rows from this. Just because of the positioning of like the repeat rows and the stripes and stuff, I think we could cut probably 10 rows from it minimum. And that's just like from me as a beginner knitter standpoint. I think we could cut that many rows. I think another thing that was really frustrating, there were quite a few rows where there were just huge floats. Like, let me see if I can show you one of the sections, but there's like a decent chunk where it's just massive floats. So you can see this is one of the rows that has that really large float here. Like, that's so long. It's like 2.5 inches of float. Up towards the top, there's quite a bit long ones too in this section. And then even higher up as well, there's a couple large floats. But this got really frustrating as kind of a beginner knitter because I don't do color work. I'm not good at color work, or at least I don't think I'm good at color work because I'm really new to it. But because of having all those floats, I was really worried when I was doing when I basically started this over and got to the color work, I was really worried about the floats. So I ended up catching my floats every like 6 stitches. Probably at about row 20 I stopped doing that just because it was taking so much longer for me to get through a single row because I have to count firstly the color switches and then secondly count the 6th stitch of the same color. But I had to essentially count the color switches in the row, and then I had to also count if there was 6 or more stitches of the same color in that row. So that became really hard to follow. I'm also dyslexic, so numbers in letters, hard. So I just stopped catching my floats at that point because I figured it'd be easier to just not catch them, which it was. I was still kind of worried about if I didn't leave enough space in each of the, or if I didn't leave enough of a float for each of the like larger gaps. But I was watching the knitting sisters on TikTok. I think it's Callie, Kay, and Bobby. I was watching all 3 of them, and I believe all 3 of them have said, you know, a lot of the drops yarn that they've used grows quite a bit, so they don't really worry too much about having really large floats in there. So if a bunch is slightly, not to worry too much, and that actually worked out for the better for me. I didn't care so much. I didn't end up trying like super hard to make sure I had a ton of space and stuff in all of the rows or between each of the stitches or floats, whatever they're called. And that ended up working out for me again. One of the big reasons as well why I restarted the first time was the increases I was doing they were super visible, and I wanted them to be not visible, so invisible. And so I wanted to restart to have that as well and make sure all of my increases look the same. Honestly, the color work section was not hard, but it was becoming very like annoying towards the end of it because it was like, it kind of just felt never ending. The last probably 8 rows were some of the hardest rows for me just because we're so close to the finish line but not close enough. Which really was kind of hard to like grasp or get through. Oh, I should also mention, this sweater I started after not including the first attempt I made of this sweater. I started it on March 16th and finished April 18th before blocking. Technically it was April 21st-ish once it finished blocking, but still, I think that's pretty good progress. A month for a pretty large sweater. I am plus size, so this essentially, the sizing for this is probably like a 4X. So that's not too bad, and it's not too long of a time frame. However, with that being said, once you get through the chart of the fish, there's a section where you do an extra 8 rows for the size I made. You do an extra 8 rows of just black and then split for the sleeves. Or I think you do like another round of increases, then split, then do the 8 rows, then split for sleeves. Doesn't really matter here, not the point. Point is, I didn't end up doing 8 rows. I think I only did like 4, just because by the time, if I did all 8, my sleeves would start way lower than they already are, and I really like the position they're stopping in now. Let me see if I can show you kind of. So currently, the sleeves stop here, and my armpit's like here. So I have probably about 1.5 inches from my armpit, which is really nice, and I like that. But if I had done all 8 of the rows, it would have put it like another inch or so even lower, and at that point I would get the like bat wing effect going on. For the body, it's just knitting straight with the black yarn all the way down. And then basically what I did for that was I got to the point kind of where I wanted it to sit. Again, I knew this yarn was going to stretch a decent amount, but I kind of got it to like right at where my stomach sits, like the lowest part of my stomach sits, including the ribbing, and then cast it off because I knew it would grow 2 to 3 inches. So I knew that would work for me. I did a different bind off than I did on the sleeves. I don't know if it'll even like show up really. But basically I think it's called like, it's similar to an Italian bind off, but it's really just a repeat of 2 movements. You go purlwise into the first 2 stitches on your needle, and then you go into the first stitch knitwise and pull that stitch off your needle. So I just did that. It kind of creates something that looks similar to the long tail cast on almost, in my opinion. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I don't do a lot of knitting, I'm mostly a crocheter. Also, I don't know if you saw it, but there's a cute little sword in my hair. It looks awesome and I love it. I just got it today as well. Anyway, but I just got it today as well. Anyway, that's not the point here. Point is the sweater. So cast off for the sleeves, or separated for the sleeves, did the body, did the bind off for the body. I technically did 1 sleeve body, 2nd sleeve, but just to make this little breakdown easier. For the sleeves, I wanted to not get that bat wing effect that many people were having with the pattern. So I did my decreases a little bit differently than noted in the pattern. It wanted me to essentially every 3rd row to do 2 decreases in that row until I got down to 46 stitches or 48 stitches, starting at I think 108. That's just not, that's just too fast. It's decreasing too fast, causing that batwing effect to occur. So what I did instead, because I have 6 colors of these nice stitch markers, I did 6 set repeats. So the first set of 6 stitch markers was every 6th row I would decrease, and then after I did 6 rows of that, or 6 sets of that, I did 6 sets of every 5th row I would decrease, then 6 sets every 4th row I would decrease, and then 6 sets of every 3rd row decrease. This created a really nice, in my opinion, smooth transition for the decreases. So it's not even really giving you any bat winginess, which is nice. And then I dropped my needle size down to my smallest size, which for me is a 3.25. That's what I did the collar and both the cuffs and all 3 sets of cuffs out of, I believe. So both cuffs on the wrists and then the body cuff. And then I did just the typical stretchy bind off for the wrist cuff. But I wish I knew this body bind off when I did my first sleeve, or else all of it would be bound off this way. I love this bind off, it's so nice. I really like the way it looks. It keeps it stretchy without it being overstretched, which kind of my bind off sort of does, but since I blocked it, it doesn't really do it too much, which is nice. Now, some additional thoughts, feelings, opinions. I don't love mohair. This was my first time working with mohair. I used the Kid Silk mohair by Drops. I don't know if that's like a good or bad mohair to use, but I don't love it. I thought I might. I don't hate it. It's not super scratchy or itchy, but if I think about it too much, I start getting itchy from it. I also think the halo effect that is being created on the fish, I don't know if it'll even pick up on camera from the angle, but like you can kind of see it here. I just don't really love it. I feel like it makes it harder to see the like details of the fish with all this fuzziness going around. So I think when I make this sweater next, because I still want to make it a second one for Halloween season, but when I make this sweater next, I think I'm going to use Drops Daisy instead. I made a little swatch of it for a sweater for my husband, but this is using their green color, and I really like the feel of it. It's not scratchy, it's not irritating, it's not rough, it's really nice actually. So I think when I make this next, I will use Drops Daisy. I think those are really my main opinions on this sweater. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any thoughts, feelings, opinions of your own about this sweater pattern, let me know. I will say as well, I don't think I mentioned this in the very first video, second or third video, But I did not know about the controversy slash drama around Caitlin Hunter before making this pattern or making this sweater. I've since learned and will not, I'm not going to continue to buy patterns from her in the future. For those who don't know, basically she used to name a lot of her patterns after indigenous terms or areas or things like that. And she's not an indigenous woman. She doesn't really do much with indigenous folk. But basically she got called out for it and was like, well, I donate a decent amount of my proceeds, so I'm allowed to do this, which that's not really how that works. I might not be super educated on this. I only kind of know what my other knitting friends have told me, so if I am wrong, please correct me, I don't mind. That's just what I've been told and kind of what I saw online about it. But regardless, I think one of my next videos you're gonna see, which I'm so excited for, is another sweater. I think this one's gonna be my husband's sweater. I am hoping to make, it has an otter on it. I can't remember the name of the pattern. If I can find my screenshot, I'll put it here. But basically, it has a giant otter on it, and I think he'd really like it, and I know he'd really like it because I've showed it to him. I think one of my other projects that I really want to work on is just getting my Ellison vest finished, and so I can give you guys some thoughts, feelings, opinions on that as well, because I do have some, not super negative, but I just do have some thoughts, feelings, and opinions on it, especially since I crochet more. And then, oh, I'm also working on making another cardigan. I want a cardigan I can wear in more of like my day-to-day life. I think the Forest Plains cardigan, since it's that 100% alpaca, is really itchy to me. I did not think it was when I was working on it. I didn't even think it was super itchy the first time I wore it, but every time I put it on now, it's extremely itchy, irritating, all of that. I have noticed in the last year or so, I've become hypersensitive, or my skin has become hypersensitive to a lot of new materials it wasn't previously. I think alpaca just unfortunately falls in that category. But the Drops Flora that I used, I held double with the mohair. The Drops Flora, I don't think I mind very much. It's not super itchy to me. I even knit up like a little swatch of just the Flora. It's not bad. So maybe I'll either consider doing the second version of the sweater in either the Drops Flora or the Drops Daisy. Oh gosh, there's so many names. Or in Drops Daisy. It really just depends what I end up deciding to do. I don't think I'll start that sweater until probably end of the year or towards October anyway. That's the point. If there are any other patterns that you think I would like to make or that you want to see me make, let me know. If you have any thoughts, feelings, or opinions on this pattern yourself, please leave them below. If you have any thoughts, feelings, or opinions on the yarn that I've used or yarn that I've mentioned, I would love to hear it. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!